Let's see how we can use the flatten function in Google Sheets. We have the flatten function Google Sheet open and it has the data template we require. In the K1 to N1 range we have the serial number, 1, 2 and 3. In the K2 to N2 range we have the name, A, B and C. In the K3 to N3 range we have the department, Department 1, Department 2 and Department 3. Suppose in column A, we want all in one column, that is, we want this data from the K1 to N3 range in one column, column A, in the A2 to A13 range. For this, we can use the flatten function, which flattens values into a single column. It takes range, optional range 2, and so on as arguments. An example is shown. So for our case, we will write, equal to, flatten, range will be K1 to N3. We see that, we get the serial number, 1, 2 and 3, name, A, B and C, and department, Department 1, Department 2 and Department 3 in one column. That is, first we get the first row data, then the second row data and finally the third row data. The flatten function gives values ordered by arguments, then row, then column. Entire first row of an input is added before the second row, and entire second row of an input is added before the third row. Next, suppose in the C1 to C4 range, we want the K1 to N1 data transposed, that is, we want the serial number 1, 2, 3 in column C. And in column D, in the D1 to D4 range, we want the data from K2 to N2 range transposed, that is the name A, B and C. And in column E, in the E1 to E4 range, we want the data from K3 to N3 range transposed, that is department, Department 1, Department 2 and Department 3. How can we do that? Instead of using the whole range K1 to N3, we can do a row-wise flatten 3 times. First, in cell C1, we will write equal to flatten, range will be K1 to N1. So, we see that, we get the serial number 1, 2 and 3. Next, in cell D1, we will again write equal to flatten, but the range will be K2 to N2. So, we see that, we get the name, A, B and C in column D. Lastly, in cell E1, we will write equal to flatten, range will be K3 to N3. We see that, we get the department, Department 1, Department 2 and Department 3 in column E. So, we got the row-wise data in the K1 to N1, K2 to N2, and K3 to N3, serial number name and department data in the column C, D, and E. Now, suppose, in the G, H, and I columns in the G1 to I4 range, we want the same data as in the C1 to E4 range. But instead of using these 1, 2, and 3 flatten functions, we want to use the flatten function only once and get this data. We already saw this flatten K1 to N3 gives this data in one column. And we see that we get serial number data 1, 2, 3 and 4, name data 1, 2, 3 and 4, department data 1, 2, 3 and 4. We want 4 rows, then next 4 rows should be in the next column, and the next 4 rows should be in the next column, so we want to wrap the columns after 4 rows. In cell G1, we will write the same function we used in cell A2, that is, equal to flatten K1 to N3. But over this, we will use another function wrap columns. WRAPCOLS function wraps the provided row or column of cells by columns after a specified number of elements to form a new array. It takes range, wrap count, and optional pad width as arguments. An example is shown. For our case, we will have the range as flatten K1 to N3, wrap count will be 4, because we want 4 rows after the data should go to the next column. We won't give pad with argument. We see that we get the same data, serial number, name, and department as in the C1 to E4 range, in the G1 to I4 range. Now, suppose we don't have any data of department for B, that is, the department for B is null or blank. We see that in column A, we get instead of department to null or blank, in column E we get instead of department to null or blank, in column I as well we get instead of department to null or blank. The flatten function does not skip empty or null or blank values, it takes it as is, if instead of null we want TBD and the data in G1 to I4 range. Over this formula, we can write an if function. If this is blank, that is if is blank returns true, we will have TBD, and if it is false then whatever this function would have returned we should get the same value. The formula in the is blank would return an array, so we will have to use array formula over the if function. We see that, instead of null or blank, now we get TBD, and other values remain unchanged. With this, we have successfully learned how to use the flatten function in Google Sheets. Thank you for your time. Please like, share, and subscribe if this video was useful.